This episode is brought to you by Soul Taker Fightwear, proud partners of the Jiu Jitsu Lu podcast. I recently had my own custom Jiu Jitsu Lu podcast gi designed by the team, complete with Soul Taker branding and my name embroidered on it, and I absolutely love it. If you're thinking about a custom gi for yourself, your academy, or your team, head over to Soul Taker Fightwear and start the conversation today. You're listening to the Jiu Jitsu Lu podcast, and I'm Lou Temlett. I know you're having a good day because either you've been on the mats considering getting on the mats, or maybe you're helping people get the most out of this sport. I'm so happy you're here listening or watching this episode. Please don't tap out before the end. When you love competitive sports, start training jiu-jitsu. I'd like to welcome Andy Hardwick to my podcast. Hi Andy, how you doing?
Hello. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing
good, thanks.
I was before we started recording, we were kind of juggling around with names, and you are an Andrew, known as Andy, but also known as Hardy for your surname. So anyone listening or watching, please expect me to switch between one or the other. But for now, Andy, give me some background into where you're based and your rank.
So I am, again, like you said, Andy, but everyone tends to call me Hardy, so either or is fine. I'm a black belt. We are located in the north of England. I'm from a small town called Chorley, but my gym, which obviously anyone who's looking visually can see behind me, is located in Bamber Bridge, which is sort of like a sort of smaller town just on the outskirts of Preston.
Nice. So you're a black belt and you've been training since around 2015. Why did you start training? Let's allude to this competitive aspect.
So I as a kid played rugby league for most of my young life. I was quite a good player. Obviously, probably due to the fact I'm about 5'8" and not very heavy. Obviously, never ended up going pro, and like most sporty kids, sort of messed around trying to find various different things to do, and I'd like boxed a little bit as a kid, so tried a bit of boxing. That wasn't really for me. I was smart enough to realise that I needed some brain cells in later life, and then stumbled across a jiu-jitsu academy in my local town and went down and tried a session, and that was it really. I haven't really looked back since.
No, that's fantastic. And I think I know some of us come through the kind of rugby route and then find jiu-jitsu or boxing or whatever. But you tried boxing, but you absolutely made that decision to move on to Brazilian jiu-jitsu. How was your boxing experience?
It was good. I loved it. I think the big problem for me was obviously coming from rugby. I'd had a couple of head injuries, whether it's concussions, whether it's just knocks to the head and stuff like that. And obviously, as you're getting older, those repercussions tend to highlight themselves a little bit more. And obviously, again, I love boxing. I was never very good at it, but I always enjoyed again, we'll probably talk about this, but like I've always liked physical competition. I've liked the challenge of figuring somebody out and all that different stuff. And it just came to a point where I was like, I enjoy this, but I'm not sure it's, again, I know it was only sort of like 21, but like I was like, I'm probably a bit old to actually get any good at this. And I quite like being able to push things as far as I can push them. And I was just a bit like, I was picking up, like, I was having headaches all the time, stuff like that, stuff that would be really, really normal for people who, I don't know, train MMA or boxing as a general. But I was a bit like, I'm not sure this is the one for me, really.
Yeah. It's, it sounds quite horrific if you're not in those sports to kind of feel headaches on a regular basis, but knowing there's something physically not quite aligned for you to change the sport or the activity you're doing, however much you love it. But I'm quite interested in your vision for choosing something that you could get really good at a relatively young age. But I know so many of us start Brazilian Jiu Jitsu at a later age, but where was the drive to kind of achieve that competitive aspect, where does the vision come from to be the best at the thing you're doing?
I mean, I think it's something that's, I guess, like with most people who grow up playing sports and are, in no disrespect, meaning when you're good at a sport, you typically have quite a natural competitive edge anyway. In terms of, it's not necessarily, I wouldn't say that it's something that I've ever defined as like I'm trying to be the best at something. It's something that's
Yeah.
just like, I guess, ingrained, really. The whole process around it, whether it's turning up for training, whether it's applying yourself, whatever the reasoning is, it's always come. I've been quite fortunate. Again, you can thank my parents in that they always pushed me to play sport, and it was something that I always loved to do. So it was just always ingrained. The process of turn up to training, apply yourself, train hard, do the work that you need to do was just quite a natural thing coming from a sporting background.
Yeah. Any of us that did sports, school sports, team sports, whatever, maybe after, my mind's going back to after school hockey and netball matches. But the regular training doesn't kind of exist in the school format. So was all of your childhood kind of sports outside of the education system?
Yeah. You could define my childhood through the lens of sport. Like, I reckon if obviously spoke to my mum, it was everything and anything I could possibly do. Like, there's not much that I've not had a go at or played at. Obviously some things I was better at than others, but I pretty much did everything. I was in every sports team at school, and then after school was taken up by driving to rugby training, football training, weekends were matches. Like, it was pretty much until I was probably about 18. My entire sort of life was defined by playing sport, really, and it still is now. But
Yeah, I do love hearing stories of childhood where it just becomes the normal practice for after school weekend training, and it gives anyone outside of that a sense of, I don't know, that growing competitive, the good routine. Is there any of those sports that you tried in your earlier childhood that you kind of wish you'd continued in any way?
um, no, is the honest answer. I think the only thing I wish I'd have cared more about as I'm getting older is
Mm,
just me. And it sounds daft, but just doing a bit more running. Um, just from a sheer like fitness standpoint, I think it's such a good vessel for general
yeah,
health and exercise. But I think because when I stopped playing rugby, I was like, well, I can't be bothered running anymore. So I sort of like put it on the back
yeah,
burner. But honestly, no. I think rugby was always the one that held the crown in terms
yeah,
of my favourite, but also the thing that I was quite naturally good at.
yeah,
Again, those two things tend to go hand in hand in terms of
yeah,
your enjoyment when you're quite good at something. But
yeah,
everything else, I would never. There's no regrets. The only downside, in my opinion, from a competitive sport background is you're just subjecting your body to a lot of stress over a very
yeah,
long period of time, and that can obviously come with its knock-on effects. Some people get it quite lucky, some people don't
yeah,
get it quite as lucky. Like, I tore my ACL when I was like 16, which is quite a big
wow,
injury for any age. But when you're a teenager, it can be quite
yeah,
traumatic, for want of a better word. So, like, the
yeah.
the only downside to the sporting side of things in terms of that is just literally the injuries that you carry with you to later in life.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that thankfully the kids might not focus on is injury. And I know I've got some upcoming guests that kind of will talk about overcoming injury in kind of teenage and early adulthood. But the running bit, I've heard from coaches before actually that it's the one thing that keeps their cardio really good and healthy. They might lift weights, they might do lots of other things and lots of intense Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. But I've heard other people say there's nothing like running.
Yeah, and the weird thing is, I'm actually not much a runner. Like, I don't think it's something that you need to do. I think you can get
Yeah.
fit off many different modalities. It's just,
Yeah.
it's the one thing that requires, it's not like obviously like riding a bike is really good, but you've got to buy a bike. Whereas with running, you can literally you don't need any equipment, you don't need anything. You can literally put on a pair of trainers. I mean, you don't even need trainers really. You can probably get away with it doing in nothing, but like you can literally just step outside of your door and go. It's not as actually, it's actually something that, depending on the grappler, I try and avoid people doing it a little bit. But from a personal perspective, that's the thing that I'd always wish that I'd put a bit more effort into or cared a bit more about.
Yeah. I think any of us that are older grapplers, running will be our next hobby when we're running, when all the young professionals and competitors are coming through and getting closer to having matches with us. I mean, not in the same age bracket at all, but there's so much great jiu-jitsu coming through. Now, you co-own and run the Grappling Society. Talk to us a bit about that.
Yeah, so it's me and my best mate, Josh. Me and Josh have been mates since year 4. We went to every school together. We played rugby together. We've known each other for a very, very long time. It's rare that you'll see one of us without the other. And yeah, we both always had because we both, again, came from rugby backgrounds, and we both always had a real passionate interest in coach. I mean, I coach professionally for a living, obviously outside off the mat, like strength conditioning wise, but we've always both had a real passion for coaching. And it basically spawned off that. We wanted an opportunity to do things the way that we wanted to do. And we think there's a lot of holes in jiu-jitsu when it comes to coaching. And yeah, we just wanted our opportunity to create a culture, create an environment, and do things on our own terms.
I just want to honour year 4. My daughter is in that age group, so kind of 8, 9, 10 years old. To have a childhood friend still around, still really great friends with, that's a kind of achievement in itself, Andy.
It is. Yeah. I mean, it sounds a bit cliche, but he's not really mate. He's just more like a brother, really. Like I said, it sounds ludicrous, but like it's since we were like 10 years old, there's very rarely a time period that we're away from each other for more. I mean, even more so now, because obviously we work in the same space, but it's very rare that we spend less than 2 weeks apart. We always say that, like, there's a bit of a running joke. Obviously, we've both got partners, and there's always a bit of a running joke is that when one of them gets a partner, they think they're taking one of them, but they're taking 2 on at the same time. We're both lucky that we've got very, very understanding partners, and that does help the situation. But yeah, we certainly we get on each other's nerves. We've had some rows, like, don't get me wrong, like, but we're still going strong.
Good. I love to hear it, and it's kind of inspiring to know that different people in society have such long-term friends, because even in jiu-jitsu, when we're starting at a new Brazilian jiu-jitsu school, we can kind of have friends, and if we move on or move location, then kind of friends come and go, equally with education, schools, work, whatever it happens to be. There's so much kind of transient nature around friendships and kind of just being there for other people, because we make ourselves so independent. But Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu really does bring everyone back together. And I kind of want to go, that sounds cliche too. But why the Grappling Society? What, out of all those things, if you kind of had a background in rugby, why a grappling school?
I mean, obviously, first and foremost, it's something that we're both incredibly passionate about. We both trained for pretty much the same time frame. I've dragged Josh to the gym pretty much a month or 2 after I started training. And it's just the thing that I'm very, very passionate about coaching. Spend a lot of time, it's my job, so I spend a lot of time learning about it, applying it, and probably spend a bit too much time reflecting on it. But it's just something that we always love to coach. We love culture. We love people. We love helping people get better at things. And again, we always try and think about, like, we both were good. Again, I keep referring back to this, but like we were both good rugby players.
Yeah.
And obviously we've come through fantastic school jiu-jitsu gyms and been surrounded by great people. But it's always the case of like there was always areas where we felt like we could have got more from somebody. Like we felt like I don't know, whatever it is. Like this isn't slagging anybody off, but like we always want to try and think, right, can we be the people that we might have needed in that situation? And I think there's a lot of room in jiu-jitsu for better coaching practice, better culture practice, better operational practice, like all this different stuff that goes into running a gym and helping people get better. And it's just something that we're very passionate about. And obviously that sort of materializes in owning and running a gym.
Yeah. What do you do to keep your coaching style kind of growing and improving? Because there are different styles of coaching, as most of us will have experienced in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in one form or another. But what helps you continue to be the best at what you're doing?
It's a good question. I think from a personal level, there's a lot of work that goes into it behind the scenes, whether that's reading literature, reading research on coaching theory and all the sort of boring stuff that a lot of people aren't interested in doing. So that's a big part of it. There's obviously constant like reflection and feedback. I'm quite a self-aware person, so like I said, I probably spend a bit too much time reviewing the things that I do. Like I said, just reviewing every session, reflecting on every session. Obviously, luckily for the gym, there's me and Josh. You're always going to have different information. So we communicate with students a lot, what they like and what they're not liking, things we think are working, things we think don't work in, something that's gone really well, what's not gone well, things we're happy with, things that need addressing, whatever it is. Like, and it's, I think there's all those different sides of it in terms of like you said, you've got the theoretical side of things, like learning about the current research, the current theories, all that different stuff. And then you've got the practical side of things, which is very heavily reflective, adaptive, and sort of rooted in that communication as well.
Yeah. What one thing do you think has made the biggest improvement? I mean, you mentioned about being self-aware, but is there anything that stands out with a notable shift and improvement in your coaching or your grappling school?
There's a lot of stuff. So we typically, our gym, we don't sort of follow a more, again, quote unquote, traditional method of doing things. Everything we do is live. We don't drill. So I guess the big shift, on a general perspective, that would be a big shift. One of the most important things that I ever got my head around was that a lot of times when we're coaching, we're looking at things from a third person. We're viewing things from the outside, and there's massive amounts of information that we're not privy to in that situation. Obviously, the person that's going through the thing, i.e., the person that's doing the game in the round in the comp, they're subject to a huge amount of information that we as coaches from an external source don't have access to, and that was a real big eye opener for me, because it's obviously visual feedback is really, really important because you can point things out, but until you have context of what that person is thinking, what that person is going through in that moment, it's very hard to piece the two together.
Yeah. I'm just remembering some of my competition matches, and I was intrigued. I was thinking, actually, you're going to say that the coach has more perspective. But I like the fact that you are kind of honouring the competitor in that sense, because they're not just seeing, they might not see a lot of the things that are going on, but it's what's going on, how you can feel where and how, and where you're kind of distributing your weight or whatever it happens to be. There's a lot. How do you, just on the back of that, do you get together with your your people in your grappling school that have been through competition and kind of reflect together to make improvements?
Yeah. So we have a we have like a reflection tool. So if somebody goes and does a comp, there's a form they have to fill in post match, and obviously that'll just go through various different things, starting from like the actual day itself. Was there any problems on the day? All this different stuff. So the real basics, like what did you think you did well? What did you think not go so well? And then we look at like some psychological factors as well. And then obviously if there's any like footage that needs reviewing, we'll review that as well. Sometimes there's no footage that sometimes it's like we don't need to go over that. That's something that doesn't need addressing. But sometimes there might be something that's like glaringly obvious as well. So we have like a reflection process that we use post competition.
That sounds really quite organised, Andy. Is there anywhere you can signpost any other coaches to something like a reflection tool that might help them and their competitors?
Not
yet, but there will be.
Yeah, so there's, I mean, obviously, like access to information about reflection is widely available on the internet. We've basically we've got our own work and then we've stolen little bits. There's a guy, I can't remember his last name. Sam is his first name. That's going to make me feel really bad that I can't remember his last name. What's his name? He does like some psychological profiling, and he uses like controllables as measurements. So like psychological controllables, so like what things in that moment can you control, like your effort, apologies Sam if I'm giving away some of your stuff, mate. Like your effort, your attitude, your competitiveness, all that sort of stuff. So I can't remember. That's really bad. I can't remember his last name. But his stuff on like the controllable side of things is really, really good. But a lot of it is just like, again, off the top of my head, I can't think of any references, but you've got a lot of, again, reflection isn't that, I don't think it's that deep of a subject. I think it's, if someone's willing to go and just do a Google search, you'll be able to pull up a lot of valuable resources on reflection and the process of going about that. And again, a lot of it is pieced together through obviously years and years of experience and working with professionals who deal with whether it's psychological side of things, whether it's performance side of things, and so it's not a great answer. Apologies.
No, it's fine. I was leading you towards a lead magnet for either your grappling school or your strength and conditioning, that, you know, a downloadable that might help anyone, you know, wanting to focus a little bit more on reflection rather than just watching the videos and having some comments, but getting the perspective from more than one side. And more than the visual side that I was interested in. You never know. Watch this space. Andy might come up with something.
Maybe.
Community Spotlight on Brotherhood Health and Performance. Brotherhood Health and Performance specialises in strength and conditioning for Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, helping grapplers of every level get stronger, train smarter, and perform better on the mats. Founded by Hardy Hardwick, their coaching is built around your individual goals, balancing strength training with your jiu-jitsu so you can improve performance while reducing the risk of injury. Whether you're a hobbyist or a seasoned competitor, visit brotherhoodhealthperformance.com to find out how they can support your journey. This is the Jiu Jitsu Lou podcast with me, Lou Temlett, coming to you from the UK. Keep checking out the clips that drop as soon as I've recorded an episode, usually way before the episode goes live. And as always, please subscribe, like, and follow on every platform you listen or watch the podcast on. Today, I'm having a conversation with Hardy Hardwick. Andy, let's go on to talk a little bit around your strength and conditioning role. Because you've got some notable people in and around the gym that you support.
I do, yeah. So I, as well as being a grappler, my day job is I'm a strength conditioning coach, working largely with grapplers in a remote sort of role. I still do a little bit of one-to-one, but obviously between running the gym and working and stuff like that, I don't have as much time for one-to-ones anymore. So most of it is through like a remote capacity.
Nice. What sort of things would kind of an everyday grappler be able to benefit from by talking with someone like you from a strength and conditioning perspective?
I think I think a lot of I think one of the biggest benefits with anything in terms when it comes to working with a good coach is I guess breaking down barriers, whether it's in terms of information. Obviously, we live in a world where information is everywhere. Which can be really confusing. It can be difficult to know what to do, when to do it, what's the right thing to do, what's the wrong thing to do. And more often than not, a good coach's job is just to try and clear through that and give you a structure and a path that you can follow and execute without sort of getting too caught up in the weeds of X person saying this, Y person saying this, and make it relative to you as well, which I think is really, really important.
Is there, asking for a friend, is there anything that any of us can start doing that would improve our jiu-jitsu game generally?
I mean, there's a lot of things really. I think the biggest thing when it comes to strength conditioning is people getting their heads around it's not a short-term thing. It's something that you should be doing forever. When jiu-jitsu's gone, the health benefits on strength training as a whole, if you forget jiu-jitsu in terms of, I don't know, like your bone density, your metabolic health, your mental well-being, the impact it has on aging and degeneration and all these different benefits that come outside of jiu-jitsu. I think that's one of the big things is just, first and foremost, is getting your head around the fact that it's not something you do for 8 weeks and prep for a tournament. It's something you should be doing all the time. But it is just start with something. I know that sounds like really simple, but most of strength conditioning for jiu-jitsu is really, really simple. It's full body. It's, I don't know, a squat, a hinge, a push, and a press. 3 sets. It's really, really basic. And I think we're often looking for like an easy answer, but that is the easy answer. We want to do 2 sessions a week consistently for the next 20 years of our lives. And that's where we really reap the benefits of strength training and strength conditioning as a whole.
Yeah. I like the fact that you framed it in a lifelong commitment, because ultimately all of us just want to be training for as long as possible into our, dare I say it, 80s and 90s. I'm very, very close to 50 now. Doing all these things is really going to potentially help my game. It might not improve my jiu-jitsu, but I've still got to work on that a bit. But just the kind of general oversight in terms of health and well-being. Do you support lots of different people in the strength and conditioning side? I'm focusing now on probably young people, young adults coming through, and the benefit to them in engaging in some sort of strength and conditioning rather than approaching it from the 50 plus range, shall we say?
Yeah. So obviously the context, it's the same, but the context changes a little bit when you've got a very young, hungry, up and coming athlete who's looking to take on the world.
Yeah.
You've always got the lens of like, you're trying to keep them on the mat. That is the fundamental goal of everything that we do, is the more you can do the thing that you're trying to get better at, the better you will become. So we're always positioning it from the perspective of trying to make sure that they're healthy, whether it's their joints, whether it's their fitness, whatever it is, they're strong, they're fit, they're capable. But within that lens, that you probably have a little bit more room to push. When you, like you said, when you're coming up to 50 and you've got kids and you've got a job on the outside and all these other responsibilities, the sort of margin, I don't want to use the word margin for error, because that makes it sound like mistakes, but when you're 18 and you've got nothing going on, your spectrum of what you can do in a training environment is completely different to, like you said, a 50-year-old who's got 2 hours a week, and that is absolute maximum. So yeah, we do. I've always been quite fortunate. I've had a very mixed client base. I've got some people who are, like you said, sort of on the master side of things. I've got some that are very much on the young adult, sort of hungry killer sort of side of things, and it's a good mixture between, like I said, some professionals. Most of them are obviously hobbyists because that's the majority of people in jiu-jitsu. But there's a good mix that keeps me interested as well.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, and it's interesting to kind of hear the different perspective. But ultimately, we all just want to be on the mats for longer and as much time as we possibly have. One of the things that did make me smile is having a job on the outside and kind of that mindset of jiu-jitsu's on the inside.
yeah. Civilian life.
Yeah, exactly. Let's hear a bit more about your Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu journey, Andy.
Yeah, so I mean, again, I started training probably 10 and a half, be 11 years at the end of this year. And I mean, I've been a bit unlucky over the last couple of years with an injury, but my goal in jiu-jitsu really was, I was always scared of one primary thing, and that was, okay, for want of a better word, like watering down the sport that I loved. I didn't want to be part of this sort of everything sort of getting easier, making it, again, this sounds really critical because it's not, I actually believe in, you want to give as many people access as possible, but I wanted to be representative of the level that I was supposed to be at, I guess is a better way of putting it. If I was a blue belt, I wanted to be a blue belt. I wanted to be a purple belt. And the goal for me really from a grappling perspective and a competitive standpoint was, I just wanted to win at every belt level. And against people my age, my weight, my skill level, and that just give me that example of like, oh no, you're not watering the sport down. You're doing it justice. You're keeping a standard. I was never interested about being the best at things. Like, I wanted to be the best that I could be, but I was never bothered about. I was never bothered about being a world champion or anything like that. I just wanted to hold a standard that I could be proud of, really.
Yeah. That's quite admirable. Just being the best you can possibly be at each belt level. I think all of us generally have that mindset, whether we speak about it or not. We all just want to do as much as we possibly can. Is there any kind of advice, mindset, overall perspective that any of us can be more inspired by for our own Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu journeys?
Yeah, I think it sounds a bit like David Goggins-esque, and I don't mean it to sound like this, but I think trying to do difficult things is really, really important. And again, I don't mean that somebody needs to go and run 100 miles and scream at a camera. I just mean find that relative level of what makes you uncomfortable, what makes something difficult. It might be, for some people, that might just be going to an open mat at a different gym. Like that could be something really uncomfortable. But I'm a big believer in jiu-jitsu as a whole is a vessel to improve yourself across the board, not just skill wise, not just physically, but like your mental capacity, your mental robustness as well. And I think that's something that I would always recommend is like, if something makes you uncomfortable, then you should probably give it a go.
I'm just having a moment of remembering some uncomfortable kind of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu experiences in my own kind of way, where even going to open mats back in the early days, I did feel really intimidated going to open mats when you don't know anyone, but you want to learn more, you want to kind of get a feel for, if it's an open mat at a gym that you've never been to, almost testing is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu really like this? And it's always really heartfelt and encouraging to know that the culture is there wherever you go and train.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think, like I said, that level of like what's uncomfortable is going to be completely different to everybody. There are some people who are completely comfortable in a competition environment. There are some people who are, like you said, it's uncomfortable for them just to walk through the door. And I think as long as you're around that level for you, I think that's where the value is. Again, if that is just going to a different gym where you don't know anybody, that's such a huge step in terms of overcoming the difficulty of things, and I think that's really, really important.
So anyone out there that wants to challenge themselves a little bit, go and find something that might be slightly uncomfortable for you in the realms of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, whether it's registering for a competition, going to an open mat. I was even thinking going to invitationals and being part of the audience at things like Polaris or Enyo. Sometimes that can be quite intimidating.
Yeah, 100%. Like it's. I think you always need. I think context matters a lot to people in terms of your reference point, and like you said, if you're somebody, it's so easy in gyms to get caught up in the bubble of the gym.
Yeah.
In terms of like, oh, these people are really, really good. These must be doing everything really, really well. And sometimes that level of discomfort might be go and expose yourself, as you said, at an event, and you go, oh shit, these lot are really good. And your context of what this sport is about completely changes. And like you said, there's obviously good people and it's really supportive. And obviously, when you just watch an event, there's no stress on you. But I think the broader you can build your context of this sport and how good people can get, and sort of what's required to get good to that level. Do you know what I mean? I think there's understanding that there's a cost that for everything can really help sort of you build that understanding of like, what do you want to do, like all these different things.
Yeah. And I think, we need to try all of these things because sometimes you don't know. I didn't know that I would be, I've not been running this show 3 years yet, but that sounds like a long time. Am I still doing this 3 years on? But, if I hadn't tried to start a thing in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, whatever it is, on the inside, on the outside, whatever it looks like, then you're never going to know. And believe me, those first few recordings were really uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? Like we funnily enough, we say this to people at the gym, like when guys come down for a trial session or whatever, and we sort of say to them, like, there's no pressure. You might not like it. It might not be for you. You will, for every person that does one session and thinks this is the best thing on earth, there's going to be 10 people who are like, do you know what? It's just not for me. I enjoyed it. I preferred something else. Like, and that could be at every level. It could be competition. It could be whatever it is. But I think as long as you are just like I said, I really don't like this conversation because it always sounds like I said, you sound like a proper like Goggins sort of this like blue pill sort of masculine bullshit. But like it's just about progressing yourself in some way, like finding a little bit of a thing that means you have to have a word with yourself and go, no, I can do this. I can get over this. And I think that's such a valuable tool.
Yeah. Andy Hardy, what has been the most uncomfortable thing you have put yourself through in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
I think there's loads of things. Obviously, one of the benefit of being quite competitive is you're always constantly unlocking some degree of uncomfortableness, whether it's a certain step up in an opponent, whether it's, like you said, a step up in a belt level, whether it's like an organization that maybe holds a bit more external weight to it. So like it's a bit more clout behind it, certain shows, I think you're always finding different ways to expose yourself. I think that's why it's important if you are competitive to do different rule sets, different formats, different shows, go abroad, do it at home. Like, I guess one of I've always had I remember being sat backstage at a grapple fest with a load of guys and we were all sort of like getting warm. And we're all having this conversation of like, it's really strange how your brain instantly like just go home. You don't have to like, and you just go home. There's nothing wrong with going home. And I guess that's one of the ones that sticks out to me is like how your brain will always play tricks. But again, it's hard to pinpoint like one like really, really iconic moment because there's been a lot. I won't lie to you. I've had a lot where I've sort of gone, oh shit, I'm not sure this is what I want to be doing.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I was thinking there might be, I'm sure if you think of any really uncomfortable, situations that you've overcome, then do share them on your socials. Andy, how can people follow your journey and maybe see content that you're sharing and inspiring others to be, the best they can be?
Yeah, so I have obviously Brotherhood Performance is my sort of strength and conditioning page. That's all obviously about like preparing for jiu-jitsu, whatever it is, keeping yourself on the mat, things that we talked about, managing injuries, all that different stuff. And then the gym is just the Grappling Society. If anyone's local to the area, you're absolutely more than welcome to drop in and train. And yeah.
Fantastic. Andy, it's been an absolute pleasure. I never know what sort of journey and stories I'm going to get, but I'm really quite inspired by what you have to say, and just continue to do all the great things for all the people around you, and yes, go and visit the Grappling Society.
Thank you. I'll try my best anyway.
Good stuff. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Please do tell all of your friends about it. And as always, go and check out the clips on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. Thanks again for listening. Catch you on the next episode of the Jiu Jitsu Lou podcast.